Hope everyone can hear me. I'm so excited to be here today to chat about all things hydrogen peroxide. What's so exciting about hydrogen peroxide is it is like so widely available. You can actually get it in all pharmacies. Hospitals use it all the time. And it's a little bit like one of those things of the modern world. I can't help but understand why we are not told enough about this powerful, not very high in side effects, if any at all, natural chemical that is made up of two parts of very simple things, and that is oxygen and water alone. And I'm going to tell you how you can use it each and every day in your home, bringing down your toxic load, which is maybe the most important thing when it comes to finding natural hacks. There really is nothing more important than understanding that you can do things, you can be effective in things, you can be functional in your lifestyle, and you don't have to poison yourself while you're doing it. I'm also going to be talking about the differences between hydrogen peroxide and bleach, because some people become extremely confused between the two. And I'm going to also do a little bit of a deep dive on hydrogen peroxide and swimming pool water, why we made the change, how I made the change, and why no one is talking about it. It's kind of hilarious to me that mainstream products that have billions and billions of pounds of marketing behind them are FDA approved, or whatever you want to call it. And the next thing, 3 to 5 years later, with enough lawsuits behind their belt, you understand that in actual fact, these things are nowhere near safe for us. Case in point, a recent YouTuber's drink called Prime, which I'm sure children all over the world were drinking because it had coconut water in it. And you have to kind of really be able to work quite hard in order to understand labels and read things to really get a sense of it. So when people are reaching out to me and saying, but hydrogen peroxide, I read in the internet that it can be dangerous, or it can be corrosive, or it shouldn't be used on your skin. I like to say to people that I work with and to my children that anything that is advertised on TV and told is safe, seriously, please try and think twice about it. And anything that they're trying to distract you from looking into is probably what demands your attention. So let's dive in. I've told you hydrogen peroxide is 2 parts hydrogen, 2 parts oxygen. That means it's simply just oxygen and water. And the way in which it heals is through a process called oxidization or oxidation, which adds oxygen to a thing to make it better. So can you imagine when I discovered that for half the price, I could get gallons and gallons of 35%, and I'm going to be chatting through the grades of hydrogen peroxide and how you should use them. Hydrogen peroxide, and I could add it to my pool myself, and that it would feel like swimming in a spring. And I've had myriads of reports. I had an amazing man I work with in Miami who looked at my YouTube video and did his pool, and he was like, it truly is like swimming in a mountain spring. And that adds enough oxygen to the water that the algae are killed. Your water remains extremely high in clarity, because remember, with a swimming pool, we want that really high clarity, that bright, sparkling, clear water, but also that it completely negates the idea that you have to run around after your children or run around after yourself itching after you've swum because you need a shower and you need to try and rinse off as much of the chlorine as you possibly can. What are the problems with chlorine? Well, we have chloride in our tap water. And so often if women are struggling with thinning hair, or men, you might actually have quite high levels of chloride in the water where you are showering or where you're living. And that can be removed through a filter. But actually adding additional levels, and in case of public pools like in the UK and here in Dubai, they're adding large amounts of chlorine into the pool in order to keep the safety standards high. Because remember, there is such a thing as usage of a pool. So if you have 1 or 2 people swimming in a pool every now and then, as you would in your own private pool, it's a whole different ballgame of how you chlorinate that pool. So if you had a public pool, any algae, any disease, any bacteria, obviously that pool is liable. And they would rather chlorinate the living daylights out of it than stand against a case where someone might have got sick. And the same goes for water parks. And then we go on to spas and places where water is heated for the nature of relaxation and so on. And you can only imagine what's going on there because of bacteria and people being so afraid of algae and illnesses. And in many cases, yes, stagnant water and dirty water is dangerous. I'm not saying that it's not, but I'm saying that if everyone hopped on the bandwagon of peroxide, we would all as a human race be way more healthy, because peroxide not only is fantastic for swimming in, for oxidizing the skin, for getting rid of any infections on the skin. It can be used topically. It can be used to disinfect. I'm going to go through everything because I can't rattle it all off in one go. But it also is very beneficial, especially for people that suffer with psoriasis and eczema, to get exposed to hydrogen peroxide. It stops any form of infection where skin is compromised. And what does that mean? That means less prolific use of antibiotics, because the number of times you go to a doctor and there's a small patch or a small bit of skin on your child's body that's compromised, and they chuck you onto antibiotics because, again, they need to cover their back and make sure that there is no infection. And I'm not saying that's every doctor, and I'm not saying that sometimes antibiotics are not warranted and there is not a place for them at all. But I'm saying where we expose ourselves to hydrogen peroxide swimming in places where we would otherwise be swimming in chlorine, chances are, I would say very, very high, that that infection would never occur in the first place because of the power of peroxide, 2 parts of oxygen and 2 parts of water, to work in our bodies. So I spoke to you about it killing through the oxidation process. It is actually known as the world's safest all-natural sanitizer. So why, can you please tell me, do all of us not have a food-grade bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide on the shelf? The first time I was introduced to hydrogen peroxide was through the beauty industry. I have naturally blonde hair, which means that I have naturally wide eyebrows and eyelashes. And the first time I understood peroxide was when I would go to put color on my eyebrows to have any form of like shape in my face. And then I understood, okay, they use it as a mixer in order for a tint to hold on the skin. And I remember thinking, this must be so toxic and this must be so detrimental. And when I looked into it, I quickly understood it's not the peroxide, but actually what's included in the dyes that is quite toxic. So then peroxide really piqued my interest and I wanted to learn more. It's on the shelf in every pharmacy. You can find it in supermarkets. So it's by no means anything that needs to be spent a lot of money on or that needs some kind of a prescription for. But it really works across the board. So the way in which you would treat a pool would depend on a myriad of things. How high is the usage? There are a number of pools in America, aquatics centers and aquatics parks that use 35 to 50% grade, which is very, very high. And I'll talk you through the grades in a minute. Hydrogen peroxide into the water. And then when there is high usage like diving, swimming, competitions, galas, etc., they will couple that with the use of UV light in order to reduce any sense of algae, bacteria or overgrowth. Now, we have a small private pool here in Dubai. We've never had a pool before in our lives. We came from 16 years of living in London, and I was going to make it my mission to figure out how not to put chlorine in this pool. And I also noticed that moving from a country like London to Dubai, my children were in the water a lot more. Now, ideally, as parents, we always want our children in the sea, wallowing around and getting all that healthy benefits of swimming in the ocean. But, 9 times out of 10, I'll encourage mine to go after they swim in the pool and sit in the sea and kind of like detox effectively. But when your children are exposed over summer periods to high levels of chlorine, you will see a difference in them. And if they have compromised skin, it will affect them. And even if they don't, you get that smell of chlorine on the skin. And chlorine is detrimental to us. We need to detox it from the body, especially if they're swimming in heated pools, like in the UK. If they are strong swimmers, if they're doing squat swimming, or if they are learning to swim in heated pools, you'll be assured that they're absorbing a lot of chlorine. There's 2 separate issues here. Number 1, you can include a lot more iodine in your diet. You can look at an iodine protocol. I've done something about it on my personal channel, or you can DM me, where you can patch test for levels of iodine in the diet, because it's very low for a lot of people. It's called not called the lost mineral for a good reason. Or you can include more seaweed and kelp into their diets, because that actually really does help push the chlorine out of the body. But why not take matters into your own hands and start speaking to schools, speaking to gyms, speaking to leisure centers, and saying, look, you're going to save half the money and everyone is going to benefit and everyone is going to win. The beauty of hydrogen peroxide is you kind of have to just figure your way around it. And it probably is a good time for me to kind of get onto the grades. There's 2 grades that we mostly deal with. 3.5%, which is the lowest grade. Its food grade is really important, which means that it can be ingested, but I never, ever advise, just because it is food grade, that you ingest hydrogen peroxide. But this now is something I would have in my home no matter what, and I'll tell you now why. You can get it through my Amazon shop. In my link, I have a whole bunch of products that I recommend through Amazon. And I put it into a little spray bottle and I use it for a myriad of things. For healing, for sore throats, for ear infections. We use it to sterilize our toothbrushes. We use it for mouth ulcers. We've used it for warts. We've used it for everything, and it works amazingly. And then the grades go up to 6 to 10%, which is about the grade that's used as a setter for eyelash and eyebrow dye, hair dye, all that kind of stuff, because you can actually use hydrogen peroxide to get natural highlights. Now, if you're a natural blonde like me, please don't do that, because I put 1 year kind of like strips into my hair and it went yellow. So I just used the nature of the sun on my naturally blonde hair, but you can delve into that if you want to. I don't have any experience or any but I know that you can do it. And then it goes up from 10% to 35%, which is what I use here for my pool, up to 50%, and then all the way up to 90%. So you would be interested to know that at the top end of 90% grade hydrogen peroxide, they are using that to put oxygen into rocket fuel. So you can imagine that this stuff works. And I don't know why we're not told enough about it, but it's the nature of the natural world. Things that really work, that are free and easy, are not that don't have that much marketing budget behind them. So I opted for 35% over 50% to use to clean our pool. Why? Because once hydrogen peroxide becomes strongly concentrated, it can be corrosive. So you need to be quite careful with it. Now, what does that mean? Well, I've sprayed 35% hydrogen peroxide on my body and I've been absolutely fine. But what they would say is if you're pouring 35% hydrogen peroxide by the cupful into your pool in order to clean it, or someone who's helping you with your pool is doing it, you wouldn't really want to get it near your body. But that doesn't mean that it's bad for you. That just means that it is a powerful mix of oxygen and water, so much so that it will cause this oxidation process in your pool that will allow for clarity, cleanliness, and kind of deadening of all the algae and all the bad things we don't want in our pool. And I just worked on 30 to 40 parts per million. So you can make a note of that. It's very difficult to understand. And I don't want to get into the technical side of how to work out how to do your pool right now, because you might not even have a pool and you might just want to know more about hydrogen peroxide. So you can email me if you want to know more, or DM me if you want to know more about how actually to work it out for your pool. But I can tell you now, when I got a quote for chlorine, we're paying less than half, if not a third of the cost of what chlorine would be. My children can swim in there day and night. There's no showering afterwards. I know they're getting extra oxygen into their body. And then again, any fungus, any athlete's foot, anything that children deal with, any body odor in adults. Often I work with people whose gut health is so off that they struggle with body odor that not even a deodorant would work. Peroxide works for all these things. Acne, which is overgrowth of bacteria on the face due to diet and a myriad of other things that can be really healed. Without these strong astringent creams that cause a deadening of the face and a drying and a peeling off of the face in order to promote some version of antibacterial cleansing, hydrogen peroxide will really do the trick. So that's how it works for the pool. It is low cost. It comes in different grades. It's easy to get your hands on, and it is absolutely perfect to use around the house. So I now mix my own 35% into different variations as to what I use around the house. So let me get onto the quick and easies, like how you can actually use it around the house. Remember what I said, if you missed, every natural pharmacy has hydrogen peroxide, and it is the world's safest natural sanitizer. So here's the myriad of uses. If you don't yet have it in your home, you should get it. For those of you that suffer from sore throats and you can't kick them, my first port of call to people is always gargle with salt, Celtic sea salt if you can, as strong as you can manage it. And when you gargle with that salt, it will deaden and kill whatever kind of bacteria is sitting in your throat. If that's not working, you can put 1 teaspoon of 3% food grade hydrogen peroxide in a half a cup of water and Google with that, and bam, you will be absolutely perfect. Hydrogen peroxide is sensational for disinfecting cuts, okay, as is iodine. Iodine can sting, and so can peroxide. But peroxide, you can put in a spray bottle, and again, you can just use a teaspoon with a bunch of water and spray onto a cut. I sprayed 3% directly onto my skin. Why? Because I was walking along the beach, which is something I love to do every single morning, and like been a pipe dream of mine my whole entire life, and can't get enough of it even 2 years down the line. And I stepped over a big water pipe, and down the one side had grown all of these barnacles, and the barnacles shredded my calf where it basically flapped off. As you can imagine, only barnacles could do. So my husband was like, let's go to the hospital. And I was like, don't be ridiculous. I've got peroxide. And we sprayed peroxide day and night in that wound. And I had never even 1 iota of a problem. And what you will see is the oxygen, the 2 parts of oxygen alongside the 2 parts of water in the peroxide created like a fizzing effect on the skin. And you can actually see the bacteria dying. It's so satisfying, in the words of my children. So satisfying. So disinfecting cuts. Now, I spoke to you a little bit about acne. For anyone that's dealing with prolific acne and they realize that there can be overgrowth of negative bacteria, especially if there's pus and it's weeping and it's ouchy. You can, again, what's the word I'm looking for? Water down the hydrogen peroxide or not, depending on yourself. Yeah, I'm a gut feeling person. Don't ask me for recipes. But hydrogen peroxide is beautiful for acne, and you can look more into that if you want. For people that suffer with halitosis and bad breath, I actually don't recommend you gargling or mouth washing with peroxide too often. Why? Because the mouth is actually an oral microbiome. Okay, as we have our gut microbiome, we also have an oral microbiome, which is the inside of our mouth. We really don't want to kill all the bacteria inside of our mouth, which is why, please, if you are using Listerine or you have been marketed to and fallen for any of these really strong alcohol-based mouthwashes, first of all, they are full of a myriad of toxins and chemicals. And secondly, every single day you are killing your oral microbiome. And we need good bacteria inside of our mouth to begin the digestion process, especially if we're trying to build up our gut health and our immunity and our resilience. So this would be, if you're suffering from halitosis and you can't get rid of it, hydrogen peroxide gargle will kill off the dead bugs, the bacteria in your mouth that's causing that breath. And also for people that do extended fasts and you get that ketosis breath as well, you can, hydrogen peroxide can help. I never recommend, please write this down, that you use it as a routine thing, because again, you will overkill the bad bugs, a little bit like an antibiotic. Just because it's good for you doesn't mean you want to wipe out the oral microbiome as often as you can. Foot fungus is another amazing one. Hydrogen peroxide and apple cider vinegar, you would be blown away to understand how powerful these things can be as natural healers. My son got a planter's wart on the top of his foot. We've never really had warts as a family. And the first thing we did was just a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, apple cider vinegar on the planter's wart with cotton wool, soaked in cotton wool, and then wrapped every night for 3 nights. And boom, the planter's wart roots came up out of the toe and it fell off. Basically, it was like a little crater left in his skin, and he's got normal skin now. So for people that are struggling with warts, please reach out to me and I can explain more there. The next one I want to chat about was a complete game changer for our family and came from my friend Kim. I was struggling with my youngest son having one of those coughs that just doesn't go away. You know, it doesn't really bother them, but sometimes it does. Sometimes it gets bad at night, but not really. But we couldn't get rid of it, which was part of our problem. And she said to me, and she knows how much I love hydrogen peroxide. She's like, have you tried it in a nebulizer? And I was like, no. And we all well know that the first thing that a doctor will do when you have any kind of bronchial issue is give you a steroid which goes into the nebulizer, which needs to be nebulized over the child's nose 2 to 3 times a day. Now, let me tell you that there's different types of steroids. There's topical steroids, which would be a hydrocortisone cream. There's oral steroids, which would be a steroid syrup. There's injectable steroids, which would be a steroid injection for someone in anaphylactic shock or something along those lines. And then there's in actual fact a inhaled steroid, which is the case in point asthma pumps, inhalers, and all that kind of stuff. They all have quite a similar effect on the body. You know, just because you're inhaling a steroid doesn't mean it's not having the same detrimental effects that a cortisone cream would have on your body. And I've dealt with all too many moms through the work I do around eczema, that children are dealing with topical steroid withdrawal because no one tells them that if you overuse a steroid, case in point inclusive of an asthma pump, your child will have withdrawals and they will be reliant on it either for their whole entire lives, which makes our bodies really, really weak, because a steroid in the long run is not prescribed. Even a doctor will tell you that long-term steroid use is detrimental. But they don't give you any other options. And then when you cut it short, you do suffer. So hydrogen peroxide can replace that steroid, not in all cases, and I'm not a doctor and I'm not giving any medical advice at all, but I'm telling you that a teaspoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide along with Celtic sea salt, filtered water, I've got the recipe, you can DM me, nebulizer recipe, and we'll put together a little infographic to send out. And that in the nebulizer has helped us with so much stuff. It's helped clear sinus, it's helped clear coughs, it's helped clear up a chest, and it's been a fantastic discovery. The ears is another brilliant thing for hydrogen peroxide. Really, really powerful too. You can either put a little bit of olive oil in the ear and then a drop or two of hydrogen peroxide. It softens earwax really, really naturally, and it helps with ear pain in 1 second flat. Why? Because yet again, it kills any form of infection in the ear, and it's worked for me a million times over. People that suffer with toothache, again, it can be the pain can be lessened through a gargle with hydrogen peroxide. Sitz baths, Epsom salts, apple cider vinegar, hydrogen peroxide, really effective for candida and yeast infections, especially for women. And in some cases, I've heard people speaking about STDs and hydrogen peroxide. I'm not going to say that I think that it would work for that because I don't have any idea. But I am telling you that if you sat in a bath, a sitz bath of hydrogen peroxide, especially as a woman, if you were suffering with candida or struggling with yeast, it should have a great impact on that. Lots of people use hydrogen peroxide to bleach their teeth. If you are using chemical bleaches from the dentist to bleach your teeth, you can be assured that you are weakening the enamel and that you are staining your teeth in such a way whereby you will pay for it in the long run. I suppose it's a little bit like Botox, whatever. You feel amazing on that day, but 6 months later or 6 years later, you can realize the detrimental effect. So For teeth cleaning, I would always just say that you can brush with baking soda and activated charcoal, which is really, really perfect in whitening the teeth. And strong teeth come from an amazing diet, and I talk about that a lot on Asa Organic. Really strong teeth would come from fats and grass-fed meats, and really making sure that your diet is so nutritionally rich that you're not making any mistakes there. I don't want to go on too long. I'm going to spend 5 more minutes explaining a couple of other things. Fluoride can be extremely weakening to your teeth. So if you haven't yet caught on that I think it was just before we left the UK, so it must have been, or just before that, maybe 4 years ago, it was announced that I think Boris Johnson was going to put fluoride into the tap water in the UK. So if you're not filtering your water already, please do. And if you are using a fluoride, a normal toothpaste, bog standard off the supermarket shelves, you can be assured it's got fluoride in it. There's different ways to ditch that and build your teeth up. There's something called hydroxyapatite, which we're talking about a little bit over at Fierce Nature if you want to follow that channel. But you can also brush your teeth with literal baking soda and a little bit of hydrogen peroxide once a month, once every 6 weeks, once every 3 months to bleach the teeth, as I said, a little bit of activated charcoal and freshen up the mouth. Hydrogen peroxide also works really well as a natural deodorant, especially for those people that have strong body odor or really can't find a natural deodorant that helps enough. We have a microbiome underneath the arm, as well as we do in the mouth, as well as we do in the gut, and as well as women do in the vagina. These are all different microbiomes. And so if you are suffering with underarm, with strong smell from the underarm, the first place to look is your gut, what you're eating, how you're feeling, your detox pathways. If you're not sweating, you're not detoxifying. If you're not going to the toilet, you're not detoxifying. And those toxins have to come out somewhere. And often people's first discovery towards the fact that they're getting sick might be really strong underarm body odor, because the body is not effectively detoxifying. I talk about this a lot in my mastermind, and it's very dangerous, actually. I know a lot of women think it's great that they're not the sweating type. You want to sweat. You want to get into a elevated state, and you just want to pour with sweat. It's really, really helpful, and it shows that your body is efficient and working really, really well. What else? Whitening the nails, fantastic. I've often done it. You can just sit your nails in a bath of hydrogen peroxide and water and they go beautifully white. Gum disease is another one. A lot of people suffer from gum disease. Gum disease can be related to the diet and a myriad of other things, but a lot of people are overly keen on being overly clean. It's another great thing that they've done to market to us this idea that you need 6 billion products and you need to wash yourself squeaky clean every day. I always say to people I work with, if you walk around, if you smell someone that smells like a product, some people think it's nice. Oh, they smell like Sanex. Oh, they smell like, that means you have no microbiome of your own. You should smell like you. And those pheromones are what attracts the right people to you in your life. I know it sounds a bit strange, but our partners in life should be attracted to us by the way we smell. That's our pheromones. That's like an instinctive thing. That's the way God designed us. So, I mean, there's a lot more involved, don't get me wrong. But I'm saying if you smell like some kind of product, you've stripped your microbiome and you will be often sick and you will not be as resilient as you should be, because you need your microbiome. You need that good bacteria in order to be a protection against things of the world. So again, peroxide for gum diseases is absolutely amazing. You can soften calluses, and I could go on. House cleaning stuff, again, follow us over at Fierce Nature. We're always talking about natural ways to clean the house, and we've got exciting stuff happening through my podcast and my teaching company, the Kinetic Blueprint, where we're talking about hydrogen peroxide. I mean, I'm just going to give a couple of rattled off examples for the house. Sterilizing countertops, whitening all the grout, cleaning the mirrors, fixing the toilets as opposed to bleach, mold in the house, mildew stains in clothing. There's only one thing that will clean mold. If you've got mold in your home, again, topic for a different day, please don't tackle it yourself. The minute you release those mold spores into the air and you breathe them in, you can suffer severely from mold toxicity. If you have mold in the house, never, ever leave it, ever. And if you get it professionally clean, please encourage them to use hydrogen peroxide. It is fantastic in fighting mold. And if you have areas where mold tends to grow, but the area is clean, use 3% straight on hydrogen peroxide in bathrooms, showers, sinks, toilets, the works. And finally, and a very amazing thing is with bicarb, you can actually wash fruits and vegetables. And we now know with all these weird A-peel and all these covers and things that are coming out, marketed to us again as good. Leave your apple on the counter for 6 weeks and nothing will happen. Extremely worrying. And if you're not worried by that, be worried about the fact you're not worried about that. Hydrogen peroxide is a fantastic soak with baking powder, baking soda, to try and get chemicals off of the vegetables if you're not buying organic, and even if you are buying organic. And I would say there's the dirty dozen. Try and buy those organic, and everything else, if you're not buying organic, do make purpose to wash, especially strawberries, berries. It's really, really important. Seeing as I work through my company, Us Organic, with farms and farmers and their families would never eat their food without washing, ever, 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 ever. And glyphosate and the build up of glyphosate in the bodies of our children is causing a huge amount of ailments. So it's really important, if you can, to take that into your own hands. You can you can clean cutting boards, you can clean dishes, all that kind of stuff. A quick one, which people, last thing to note is, why would I bother with hydrogen peroxide if I've got bleach? They are two wholly different things. Hydrogen peroxide has similar powers as bleach, if that makes sense, but the makeup of bleach is NaOG. You want me to explain what that is to you? I have no idea. It's a myriad of factory produced chemicals that are put together in a highly unstable and erratic formula that is called bleach. Hydrogen peroxide, on the other hand, as I said, its chemical makeup is H2O2, 2 parts hydrogen, 2 parts water, 2 parts water, 2 parts oxygen. Okay, so it's a much more natural chemical. The word chemical in itself should not be making you scared. You know, water is a chemical, oxygen is a chemical, but when these things are synthetic, that is where we need to worry. So bleach is chlorine based, hydrogen peroxide is not. And then you might go and say, oh, well, bleach is FDA approved to use in my toilet, and they say don't use hydrogen peroxide. Again, go back to the beginning of this live once I've posted it, and have a listen as to what I think about that. Bleach is corrosive, it's reactive, it's unstable, it's full of chlorine. So if you're struggling with toxic load, you're pouring bleach into your toilet and you're breathing in fumes of chlorine, or you're soaking in a bleach bath, it's extremely helpful. It releases chlorine gas, it's irritating to the skin, and it is unstable is probably the best way to describe it. So does that mean you can never pour bleach down your drain again? No, absolutely not. You know, this is an 80-20 type of teaching. I want you to understand that you can, when you need to, use drain cleaners and corrosive chemicals and strong things, but not 100% of the time. It's really important that you really just build strength and resilience and understanding in yourself, so that you know when the time to use bleach, you use it. Have I used bleach in the last 8 years? Once, and I can't remember why, because we had a stain on, we moved into a new place and we had a stain on the toilet we couldn't get rid of. But in the end, the bleach was useless and I went back to the peroxide. So if you want to understand the difference, there's a myriad of differences. They're both chemicals. The one's natural, the one's not. The one's has little to no side effects, except for the fact that, as I said, at 90%, 35%, 50%, hydrogen peroxide is potent. You want to be using it at 3%, unless you're dosing your pool, then you go up to 35%. But bleach, on the other hand, at any point, even the bleach that you buy on the supermarket shelves, I would never allow my toddler near it. I would never allow them to breathe it in. Nothing. Whereas hydrogen peroxide, I'm happy to dilute down and spray on my child's eczema, spray on my child's wound. Why? Because I would far rather that my child uses oxygen, and the oxidation process, the natural process of adding oxygen to something to kill, then that child ends up with infected eczema and has to go on a 7-day course of antibiotics, wipes out the entire microbiome, and you've got to start all over again. So I hope that helped a lot of you. I wanted to see if there was anything else I wanted to touch on before I close up. But the beautiful thing about hydrogen peroxide is its versatility and its low cost, and also that it offers an answer to so many things. There's a few things that I have in my kitchen that I just think, I don't know how everyone doesn't have this. The difference between hydrogen peroxide and vinegar is worlds apart. Hydrogen peroxide has that oxygen as that active ingredient, whereas vinegar is fantastic for a number of things, but I would not bet you that if I got ripped up by barnacles like I did on my leg the other day, that vinegar would do anything but burn. So vinegar has its place. It's absolutely fantastic because you can mix peroxide with white vinegar and you will remove mildew from clothing. Now, for anyone that's had their children's sports kit left in England somewhere wet and damp, and you've picked it up and thought this is going in the bin, you know, suddenly we have something that will remove mildew off of their clothing. So you can imagine if you mix hydrogen peroxide with vinegar, you get all very tough stains off of white clothing naturally without that bleach. Because when my children had eczema, oh my goodness, if I put any of their clothing in a normal detergent, let alone in a bleach, they would feel it. And so if you're bleaching all your children's whites, the remnants and the particles and the chlorine and all of that is very, very, very strong. And even if that child wears that shirt for a week, it off gases. I speak about it in my mastermind. Furniture off gases, mattresses off gas, pillows off gas, couches off gas, rugs off gas, curtains off gas. And there is a way to get around it. I teach on my mastermind. Don't be afraid of any of these things, but just be aware that bleaching and wiping clothes and washing clothes in bleach and that is not ideal. White vinegar for cleaning is fantastic. Hydrogen peroxide will disinfect, and vinegar would do the same, but not to the same degree. So I wouldn't clean my whole entire house with hydrogen peroxide, but at least heavy duty areas or areas where there was, I don't know, raw chicken or something like that, cutting boards, as I mentioned. And another really clever hack is just keeping a bottle. And if you look at my Amazon shop, I mentioned it earlier on my link in my bio, keeping a bottle of hydrogen peroxide in the bathroom. You spray the toothbrush heads once a week. And especially for those of you that have your amazing electric toothbrushes right next to the toilet. Because remember, if you don't close the lid of a toilet, and even if you do, the bacteria from feces and urine will come up and land on that toothbrush head. They've said the toothbrush head is dirtier than the inside of the toilet anyway. But spraying with a 3.5% hydrogen peroxide will kill and disinfect that toothbrush head really beautifully. And you can use it like brand new every time without having to buy a brand new toothbrush as often as you possibly need. And the last thing I'll close with there is don't overbrush your teeth, please. People are like pushing and pushing and pushing on their teeth, trying to get them whiter and cleaner. And that's where gum disease comes in, because we push our gums back, and then they become tender and sensitive, and actually hard brushing is counterintuitive to what you want to be doing. So there was a lot there. I've entitled the live 60 plus ways to use hydrogen peroxide. There is about 1 million more, but there's some really good ones in there. It's free, it's fantastic, and I think that you should all have it in your home. You can get it on Amazon. As I said, the one I recommend is in the link in my bio. It comes in a 2-pack, and if you've got a little spray bottle, you can just keep it around the house. It's fantastic for makeup brushes. It's fantastic for itching. It's fantastic for lazy spas. Yeah, if you work out, Amy, the volume of your lazy spa, and then work out, I think on my YouTube video, which I'll try and tag as well, you can work out the parts per million, but it's not that much. We've got a little pool here, and I walk around with a couple of cups in it. I just love the feeling. And if my kids, we live in Dubai, so it's wholly different to our 16 years spent in London. But if my children are umming and ahhing about showering, I'm like, get in the pool. And I'm happy with that, whereas if they were in a chlorinated pool, I would almost avoid swimming as often as I can, especially for my little one who is prone to eczema. So any questions, please let me know. If anyone's interested in learning, I do teach a mastermind. It used to be a year long, but I was absolutely shattered by the end of that. So I'm cutting it down to about 3 to 6 months. All this kind of stuff, off-gassing furniture, lights, toxic load, healing naturally, iodine, we go through all of it quite in depth. So I'd love to have you there. Otherwise, I am just Instagram DM away. Thanks everyone. Thank you for listening.